My female, 29, twin sister slept with my fiancé the night before our 100K wedding, then asked me to postpone it so she could process her feelings. So I did this at the rehearsal dinner and I woke up to 43 missed calls. Throwaway because my sister knows my main account. So I guess I should start by saying that my twin sister Victoria and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're identical twins, and we used to be super close when we were little kids, like literally inseparable. Our mom, Dorothy, female, 62, used to dress us the same until we were like 10, and we thought it was the coolest thing ever. But things started changing in high school when I started doing really well in school, and Victoria didn't. She struggled with classes and started focusing more on being popular and parties and stuff, which is fine. But that's when the weird competition started, I think. Anyway, I met my fiancé Logan, male, 31, about 4 years ago at this charity gala thing. My friend Megan basically forced me to go because I had already bought the ticket and she didn't want me to waste money. She knows I'm kind of cheap about certain things. Thank God she made me go because that's where I met Logan. Logan and I hit it off immediately. He works in finance and he was just so different from the other guys I dated before. After dating for like 2 years, he proposed and I said yes, obviously. We spent the next year and a half planning this elaborate wedding that honestly got way bigger than I wanted. My parents insisted on paying for everything, even though I suggested something smaller multiple times. They were like, this is our only chance to throw a big wedding for our daughter, completely forgetting that Victoria exists, I guess. The whole thing ended up costing like $100K, which is insane to me. But my dad, George, male, 65, was so excited about it all. Victoria has been acting really weird ever since we got engaged, though. She kept making these passive-aggressive comments about the wedding being excessive and saying stuff like, "Don't you think it's too soon?" Even though we'd been together for over 2 years and engaged for a year and a half by the time the wedding date came around. I tried to be understanding because she went through this really messy breakup with her boyfriend of 3 years about 7 months before the wedding. But still, I thought she'd be happy for me. One thing I should probably mention is that Victoria has always been my parents' favorite, even though they'd never admit it. Like this one time in college, she totaled my first car that I paid for myself by taking it without permission to go to some party. And instead of making her pay me back or something, my parents bought her her own car because it was a safety concern that she didn't have her own transportation. I was driving a crappy replacement car for like 2 years after that, while she had this nice new Honda, until the night before the wedding. Logan had his bachelor party, and I had my bachelorette party. Same night, different locations, obviously. During the parties, both Victoria and Logan disappeared for a few hours. At the time, I didn't think anything of it because Victoria said she had a headache and needed to go home early. And Logan texted saying he and his best man went to grab food because they were drunk and hungry. Nothing seemed weird at the time. The next morning, literally the day of the wedding, like 5 hours before hair and makeup were supposed to start, Victoria shows up at my apartment crying her eyes out, like sobbing uncontrollably. She begged me to postpone the wedding because she was having what she called an emotional crisis and needed to process her feelings about losing her twin sister to marriage. Those were her exact words, I remember, because it seemed so dramatic and weird at the time. But I've always put Victoria's emotional needs first, probably because our parents trained me to. So I agreed to postpone the wedding by a month. Logan was obviously frustrated when I told him, but he said he understood it was important to me that Victoria be emotionally ready for our wedding. Do you have any idea how much of a nightmare it is to reschedule an entire wedding for 200 people? We lost deposits, had to reprint invitations, redo flower orders, everything. My parents were weirdly understanding about the money part, though. So fast forward to 2 days ago, 2 days before the rescheduled wedding. I was dropping off the bridesmaid gifts at Victoria's apartment and realized after I left that I'd forgotten my phone there. I went back, but she didn't answer when I knocked, so I used my spare key to get in. We've had keys to each other's places since college. I could hear the shower running, so I knew she was home. I was going to use Victoria's phone to call this vendor about the final flower arrangements. I had their number saved in my phone, but not memorized, obviously, so I picked up her phone from the coffee table. And that's when a text from Logan popped up on the screen. It said, "We need to talk about what happened. I can't keep lying to her." My hands were literally shaking as I opened the message and scrolled up. There were references to that night before the wedding, and Logan saying it was the biggest mistake of my life. I felt like I was going to throw up right there on her floor. I opened her email app. I know that's invasive, but at that point I didn't care, and found a hotel receipt from the night before our original wedding date, the same hotel where Logan's bachelor party was. Victoria came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, and literally froze when she saw me holding her phone. She immediately started crying, saying, "It's not what you think." Like that's not the most guilty line ever. I didn't say anything, just turned the phone to show her the messages and the receipt. She collapsed onto the couch and started sobbing, admitting that yes, they had slept together the night before our wedding, but she blamed it on alcohol and said she'd always felt something for Logan, but never acted on it until that night. I just walked out, didn't say a word to her. I drove straight to our apartment where Logan was. When I confronted him, he confessed right away. He kept saying it was a moment of weakness and that he'd had pre-wedding nerves and had too much to drink. He literally got on his knees begging for forgiveness, saying it was just one mistake and that he still wanted to marry me. He said Victoria had been there for him when he was nervous about the wedding. Been there for him. I can't even type that without wanting to scream. I pretended to be considering forgiveness while inside I was seething with rage. I told him I needed time to think about everything. He looked so relieved, like he actually thought I might forgive this. My parents called last night, suggesting we cancel the rehearsal dinner scheduled for tonight since emotions are running high. Victoria must have called them crying, but I insisted we go ahead with it as planned, because I have plans of my own. Edit. A lot of people are asking if there were signs I missed. Maybe. Looking back, Victoria would always find reasons to hang out alone with Logan, asking him for finance advice, getting his help with her car problems, texting him about random stuff. I thought it was nice they got along, since they're the two most important people in my life. What an idiot I was. Edit 2. To those asking why I'm going through with the rehearsal dinner, all will be clear soon. And no, I'm not forgiving either of them. Ever. Now for the first update. First, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I honestly didn't expect so many responses. I'm sorry I didn't reply to anyone. Things have been absolutely insane these past 48 hours, and I've barely had time to breathe, let alone check Reddit. So after I confronted Logan at our apartment, I just walked out while he was still on his knees crying and begging. I got in my car and just drove for like 2 hours. No destination, just driving around with the music blasting, trying not to completely lose my shit. I kept getting calls and texts from both Logan and Victoria, but I eventually just turned my phone off completely because I couldn't deal. When I finally went back to the apartment, Logan wasn't there. Thank God. He left a note saying he was staying at his friend Mike's place to give me space. How considerate of him, right? I spent basically the entire night going through old photos and just seeing things I never noticed before. Or maybe I noticed but didn't want to admit. I don't know. Like there was this pattern with Victoria always wanting whatever I had. When we were kids, she would literally cry until our parents made me share my toys even when she had the exact same toy but in a different color. In high school, she briefly dated my ex Matt like a month after we broke up, which she swore was a coincidence at the time. She even applied to the same colleges as me, even though she had completely different interests. I barely slept that night, maybe got 2 hours. And of course, my parents showed up at 8 a.m. the next morning because Victoria had called them sobbing about how she'd made a terrible mistake and needed them to talk to me. And you know what they said? They asked if I was overreacting because technically the wedding hadn't happened yet when they slept together. Like, that somehow makes it better. My own parents. I swear to God. My dad George told me that everyone makes mistakes and family is forever. And my mom nodded along like this was just some minor disagreement about borrowing clothes without asking or something. Not my sister sleeping with my fiancé the night before our wedding. I just sat there nodding because what's the point of arguing with them? They've always taken Victoria's side. Always. Oh, and to answer what like 50 people asked in my last post, yes, I did the paternity test thing when we were teenagers because I was curious. We're definitely identical twins, which makes this whole thing even more fucked up when you think about it. Anyway, after my parents left, finally, Victoria showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her eyes were all puffy and red from crying, and she looked like absolute shit. I almost didn't let her in, but then I thought, you know what? Let's hear what kind of bullshit excuse she's come up with. So I let her in, but stayed standing while she sat on the couch looking all pathetic. She immediately launched into this obviously rehearsed apology about how deeply sorry she was and how she would do anything to make it up to me and blah, blah, blah. I just stood there with my arms crossed, waiting for her to finish. When she finally shut up, I asked her if she would have ever told me if I hadn't found those texts. She hesitated for a full 5 seconds before claiming she was planning to tell me after the wedding. I literally laughed in her face. Like, is she serious? After the wedding? So, I'd be married to this cheating asshole and then find out. She started crying harder and went into this whole thing about how she's always felt second best to me, which is complete bullshit because she's always been our parents' favorite and gotten away with literally everything. She said she felt a real connection with Logan that she's never felt with anyone else. I asked her if that connection was worth destroying our relationship as sisters. She had the audacity to say she was drunk and it was a mistake, but also that she's always been attracted to Logan. Like, pick a lane. Either it was a drunken mistake or you've always wanted him. Can't be both. Then I had this moment of clarity, like this perfect revenge just formed in my mind. So I told her I needed time, but that I wanted her at the rehearsal dinner tomorrow so we could talk more about everything. She looked so relieved, like she thought she might actually be forgiven. Then I met with Logan later that day. He was practically falling over himself apologizing, saying it was the biggest mistake of his life, and he'd been anxious about the wedding. And Victoria had been so supportive during his pre-wedding jitters. I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming because it was so obvious that Victoria had been deliberately feeding his doubts for months. Like, how did I not see this happening right in front of me? I told him very calmly that I needed time, but we should proceed with the rehearsal dinner as planned so we could discuss everything afterward. The relief on his face was almost comical. He actually thought he had a chance at forgiveness. Men are so fucking stupid sometimes, I swear. After that, I called Megan and she was furious on my behalf. Like, I thought she was going to drive over to Victoria's apartment and slap her. While I was talking to Megan, I had this complete epiphany about all the times I've forgiven Victoria and Logan for smaller betrayals over the years. All the little mistakes that I just let slide because that's what sisters do, or relationships take work. And I realized this pattern would never stop unless I did something drastic. So I spent yesterday methodically preparing. I got my hair done, went a shade darker than usual. Victoria always copied my hair color, so fuck that. I bought this stunning red dress instead of the blue one I'd originally planned to wear to the rehearsal. Victoria hates when I wear red because she thinks it washes her out, lol. I also wrote out exactly what I wanted to say, and I made some calls to redirect all the wedding arrangements. Kept the honeymoon tickets to Bali for myself, already paid for, non-refundable, and Logan hates long flights anyway, so this is perfect. Arranged for my wedding dress to be donated to this charity that helps women rebuilding after trauma. Redirected the catering for the reception to a homeless shelter near my apartment. Converted the venue reservation into a fundraiser for a mental health organization. I also prepared this envelope with all the evidence. Screenshots of the texts, the hotel receipt, a timeline I put together showing this wasn't just a one-time mistake. I don't know if I'll need it, but better to be prepared, right? So tonight I showed up to the rehearsal dinner looking fucking amazing and completely composed. Both Logan and Victoria looked nervous as hell when I first arrived, but as the evening went on and I maintained this pleasant demeanor, they both visibly relaxed. They kept exchanging these little glances like, oh, thank God, she's going to forgive us. I made casual conversation with family members all night. My uncle Ron commented that Victoria looked under the weather, and I just smiled and said, yes, she's been going through a lot emotionally. My cousin Jenna asked for wedding planning advice, and I gave her some tips with a completely straight face. As dinner was wrapping up, I asked the event coordinator for the microphone, saying I wanted to make a special toast. Logan and Victoria exchanged this relieved glance that made my blood boil, but I kept smiling. I'm about to go up there now. Wish me luck. Edit. To everyone asking if I think I'm being too harsh, no. My twin sister slept with my fiancé the night before our wedding and then manipulated me into postponing the wedding, not because she was having an emotional crisis about losing her twin, but because she needed time to process her guilt. Tell me again how I'm overreacting. Edit 2. Several people have asked if I have other examples of Victoria's behavior. There are so many. Like when I got into my dream grad program, she suddenly decided she wanted to switch careers and applied to the same program she didn't get in. Or when I started dating my college boyfriend, Drew, she suddenly wanted to hang out with us all the time and would text him about homework questions, even though they weren't even in the same major. Edit 3. For those saying I should just quietly end things and move on, you don't understand. My parents paid $100K for this wedding. Logan and Victoria were happy to waste all that money and still get what they wanted. Actions have consequences, and it's time they both face some. Now for the second update. First, thank you all so much for your support on my last post. Sorry I disappeared for a while, almost 2 months, yikes. But honestly, I needed some time to process everything that happened. So many of you wanted to know what went down at that rehearsal dinner, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. This is going to be long, sorry. So there I was at the front of the restaurant with the microphone. I was super nervous, but trying to look calm. About 50 people were there, our families, friends, work people, and even Logan's boss from Chicago. When I asked for the microphone, the event coordinator looked confused, but handed it over. My hands were shaking, but I gripped it tight. The room got really quiet. I thanked everyone for coming, especially those who had to change their schedules twice because of the postponement. I said I appreciated their flexibility during what had been a challenging time for our family, if they only knew, lol. I could see Victoria and Logan relax from across the room. Victoria was sitting with our cousins, and Logan was with his college friends. They both looked relieved, like they thought I was going to pretend everything was fine. Victoria even had the audacity to give me this little encouraging smile. I took a deep breath and announced that there would not be a wedding tomorrow or ever. I told everyone I had discovered that my fiancé Logan and my twin sister Victoria slept together the night before our original wedding date. Everyone was shocked. I explained that Victoria convinced me to postpone our wedding not because she was having an emotional crisis about losing her twin sister as she claimed, but because she felt guilty about betraying me. Victoria started crying immediately. Those dramatic sobs she's done since we were kids whenever she gets caught doing something wrong. Logan tried to get me to talk privately, but I ignored him. I told everyone this wasn't some drunken mistake they claimed it to be. I had evidence that showed their betrayal was planned. I put an envelope with all the screenshots and hotel receipts on the center table. My mom told me I was making a scene, and my dad started walking toward me like he was going to take the microphone. I told my mom that I didn't make this scene. They did when they betrayed me before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. By this point, Victoria was crying hard, saying she was sorry over and over, while my cousin looked horrified. Logan tried to approach me again, asking me to listen, but I just kept talking. I told everyone their gifts would be returned. Then I announced my adjustments to the wedding plans. I was keeping the honeymoon tickets to Bali and leaving tomorrow alone. I had donated my wedding dress to a charity that helps women rebuilding their lives after trauma. I had sent all the catering for tomorrow's reception to a homeless shelter near my apartment. I had turned the venue reservation into a fundraiser for a mental health organization. Logan's parents were upset. My mom was whispering to my dad. I told my parents I was sorry they spent so much money on the wedding, but as they always taught us, love without respect isn't worth having. Victoria tried to stand up but fell back into her chair crying. I told the people who genuinely cared about me that I'd be in touch when I returned. Then I gave back the microphone, grabbed my purse, and walked out. I could hear everyone talking behind me but didn't look back. I had already checked into a hotel across town earlier that day. I took a sleeping pill, turned off my phone, and crashed hard. When I woke up the next morning and turned my phone back on, I had 43 missed calls, 17 from Victoria, getting more upset with each message. 9 from Logan, switching between saying sorry and saying I shouldn't have embarrassed them. 8 from my parents, first mad about the scene I made, then worried when they couldn't reach me. 5 from Megan offering support and updates. 4 from other family members, mostly supportive. Victoria left a voicemail where she was breathing really hard. She said she couldn't breathe and didn't want to live without me in her life, which just made me more angry because it was still all about her feelings. My mom told me to fix this situation immediately because my sister was devastated. She was more worried about Victoria than me, as usual. Logan's messages went from sorry to defensive to sad. First, he said he messed up but loved me, then complained that I embarrassed him in front of his family and boss, then said he didn't know how to live without me. I didn't respond to anyone, just got dressed, checked out, and went to the airport for my Bali flight. The first few days in Bali, I just slept, cried, and drank fruit smoothies on the beach. I found this local food that became my comfort food. I ate it almost every day while writing in my journal. I barely checked my phone, just sent Megan a quick text to say I was alive. When I got back 2 weeks later, I found out the family was split up. Most of our extended family was on my side. My dad's sisters said they always thought Victoria was spoiled rotten. Several cousins reached out saying they were disgusted by what Victoria and Logan did. My parents tried to play peacemaker at first. They suggested family therapy and working toward reconciliation. But I refused to see Victoria for weeks, and eventually even they had to admit what she did was terrible. About Victoria, this is complicated. She had some kind of mental health crisis after the rehearsal dinner, had to go to the hospital for a few days. I still feel weirdly conflicted, like a tiny part of me feels guilty, but the rational part knows this isn't my responsibility. She made her choices. This sounds cold, but I'm still working through my feelings here, okay? Logan moved out of our apartment while I was in Bali. He sent a long email accepting blame, but also trying to explain. He said Victoria had been acting as his friend for months before the wedding, making him worry about the wedding and commitment stuff. Again, how did I not see this happening right in front of me? It's been almost 6 months now. I moved to Boston for a promotion I had turned down before because Logan didn't want to relocate. Funny how clearly you can see the red flags in retrospect. I've been in therapy working through all this mess. I've set serious boundaries with my family, especially my parents who finally stopped trying to make peace between me and Victoria. Victoria is in intensive therapy working on her jealousy issues and self-worth stuff. She sent me a few apology letters that I've read but haven't responded to. Last week, she sent me a package with a bracelet we used to share as kids, with a letter that I haven't opened yet. I don't know if I even want to revisit all those feelings right now. As for Logan, complete radio silence for the past 4 months, which is fine by me. I went on my first date last week. Nothing serious, just coffee with this guy from my new office building. It was nice, but I definitely found myself holding back. Like, how do you explain to someone new that you have trust issues because your identical twin sister slept with your fiancé? Not exactly first date conversation material. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to fully forgive either of them. Maybe someday. But our relationships are permanently altered, and I'm learning that some wounds never fully heal. And honestly, that's okay. I'd rather have the scar and the wisdom than go back to being the person who didn't see what was happening right in front of her. Edit. To everyone asking if Victoria and Logan are together now, no. According to my mom, Victoria tried to contact him a few weeks after everything fell apart, but he blocked her. Guess he only wanted her when he couldn't have her, or when she was the forbidden option. I don't know, and honestly don't care. Edit 2. Someone asked about the dress donation. Yes, it was a $7 designer dress. I know, it was excessive, but my parents insisted. I donated it to an organization that helps women who've left abusive relationships rebuild their lives. They auction the dresses and use the money for their programs. Edit 3. Thanks for all the support about moving to Boston. Yes, it was scary to move to a new city alone, but also empowering. And to answer the people asking if I regret the public confrontation, not one bit. After years of putting Victoria first and making myself smaller for Logan's insecurities, it felt incredible to finally put myself first. Edit 4. Okay, I'm getting a ton of questions about the voicemails. I deleted most of them after listening once because they were too upsetting, but I did save a few from supportive family members. And yes, I did save the one from my mom about fixing the situation. My therapist suggested keeping it as a reminder of the family dynamics I'm working to change.